One of the things that passes for political correctness these days is that marginalized persons are expected to begin their talks. No, we are not victims. However, in a civil society where a person's deafness is obviously being exploited, that leaves a margin of doubt. Deaf people have to fill in blanks because they're kept outside of the loop of conversation. This happens in almost everyday situations constantly. I finally learned sign language and was able to go back to school and learn things that, for some mysterious reason, postdoctoral councils thought I should be aware of already. That's very peculiar. In understanding the critique that I bring, I want to start by showing you a book I pulled out this morning called The Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel. It was influential and inspiring to a large number of interesting people. He was a Samizdat writer from Charter 77. And in this book, there's a piece by one of his colleagues, um, called Spiritual Values Independent Initiatives in Politics. The man's name is Rudolf Bartek. And what I sometimes see in samizdat writers, Charter 77, is that common sense comes gulping up under the pressures of totalitarian society. He writes, how much scope does an individual have in living his or her life? What choices does he have? When and how can he or she decide how far his or her own decisions, actions, and efforts to determine direction and meaning will reach? What effect will they have? And he presents two alternatives. The first is spiritual, which includes ethical postulates, sensitive creation, analytical and synthetic process of learning and self-discovery and openness and progress. The relevant concepts are feeling, knowing, giving, learning, loving, believing. Secondly, by contrast, the consumer values, those having to do with consuming and maintaining one's physical existence, include a preference for comfort, surplus, material wealth. The relevant concepts are having, getting, receiving, and using. One of the things he says at the beginning of the introduction to what he calls an essay about the eternal conflict between the lives of people ranked vertically above and below each other by political power and the effort to live side by side without any of the priorities so established, is that permanent self-satisfaction is a threat to life and presents an extreme danger to humanity as humanity. Interestingly, he precedes that individuals usually experience personal satisfaction as a chronologically limited phase of anticipated success and it's the achievement of a goal. So, permanent self satisfaction is a threat to life and presents an extreme danger to humanity as humanity. For this reason, since he says that and seems to know that, I want to draw out an issue about Václav Havel, to canonize Havel. I mean, he was a remarkable man. He convinced the Russians to leave. I'm not quoting him, but from him I learned the idea that people with weak characters can still have good judgment, and he coaxed them to be emboldened to take actions behind the scenes, to be assertive. And remarkably, he convinced the Russians to leave. But to canonize Havel is to get Charter 77 confused with Area 51. His nonsensical support for Bush and Zappa marks him as a cheap intriguer, gloatingly offering the mask of whim to the chicanery of Hitler Reagan. His stagecraft brought turned to power and no end of justified desertion. The military fringes of Russia must surely gloat